So I feel you. You know, this is a greater colonization of the world, not just of Turtle Island. Yes, we've been battling for 500 years plus, but you know, the Africans have been battling for 500 years plus. You know, the South Americans have been battling as much as long. You know, this global empire. I'm happy to see. You know, we're near the end. That's what Chris Hedges says. That's what Robert Wright, I believe, says, or Richard Wolff says that you know that we are at the end of an empire, and where we choose is, you know, we can choose to carry on this colonial capitalist path. This is part of our indigenous nations, our generation prophecies and the eighth fire prophecies. We can choose that red path, that colonial path, the black snake, or we can choose that green path where we view our family members, our neighbors, not of like financial risk or a financial benefit, but as family, as community. You know, we coexist with the land. Um, Last time I was on your show, we talked about biomaterials. You know, that's how we move forward in this green economy. This is how we move forward in breaking up this colonialization. Is we break up this global network of exploitation and colonization. And I can't wait until 2028 and the general strike pops off and Turtle Island here, we're ready to join the global resistance that have been popping all off in Central America, South America, the Pamina, over in Europe. And we don't even know what the movement is anymore compared to the other nations and how much they've thrown down. So I can't wait for us to join.
Me, good to have you back on the show.
Miigwech, Anim Buju, Ernest Joseph Upperguard Peltier, the third Indigenous Ka, Makadewa, Makandunjum, Indunjaba, Mikodnakwa, Jiji, Niniweg, Bajigamag. Oofda. For those who don't understand what I just said, it was Ojibwe Moan for hi, my name is Joey Peltier. I am from the Black Bear clan of the Turtle Mountain Band of Anishinaabe, living here in Bemidji, Minnesota. Miigwech, JB, for having me on your show again. I haven't been back for, is it about 6-7 months now?
Yeah.
And we were talking about hemp then, and we're talking about my great uncle, Leonard Peltier, today. He gets to go home. I believe it is February 18th. I did have a correction that I needed to make from our Savvy appearance because I thought he was going home that day, and finding out from the family that it's around the 18th when we're actually going to get his release date. But I can't wait. We, you know, Indian Collective have been working for about 2 years now around the clemency of my great uncle, and they have also a placement plan for him for an aftercare out of prison, because you know it's not easy getting out of prison and coming back to modern day, back into the population with everybody else. And our prison systems don't set up our inmates and our prisoners to come out rehabilitated in for success. So I'm glad that Leonard has Indian Collective, who's been, fighting alongside of Amnesty International and 120 tribal leaders over the last couple months pushing for this.
This is a story that's 45 years in the making, right? This is a story that's older than me. And the fact that when I heard it happen, I was like, what? And so you probably were just like, no way, right? Because from what I was reading, there was an article out of the Hollywood Reporter that was talking about that Biden's last 14 minutes as president, he communed the sentence of your great uncle. That's 14 minutes. That's cutting it very close.
It was more than I expected, because we were, following along with his parole hearing last year, and the Biden appointee, Max Snyder, Attorney General out of North Dakota, district attorney out of North Dakota, testified against the parole of Leonard Peltier. So we were thinking that there was a huge chance that, Biden was not going to do anything. And to hit us, 45 minutes, 15 minutes before he turns over to the reins over to Trump, to give a partial release, that was more than we ever anticipated. And it makes me cringe to have to thank Biden for something, but thank you. Honestly, chi miigwech. He had severe medical issues, and he was hit with COVID over a series of times over the last couple of years. And so we weren't sure if he was going to make it through the Biden administration. And to have him come home to his grandbabies and be able to become a part of our family and our community again, that it's something that we've been praying for 47 years. And JB, not to correct you, but this battle has been going on over 500 years since the colonizers came over. And what Leonard and the American Indian movement did in the 70s was only a lead up from the 40s, was only a lead up from the 1900s. It was only a lead up from the 1880s and before that. So we've been continuously going through this battle in cycles between the colonizers and trying to get land back, trying to get our governance back, trying to get our sovereignty back. And the step forward, giving us Leonard back, doesn't stop there, and it won't stop us there. We are not just organizers to free my great uncle Leonard. We're also organizers for our land, for our communities, and for our people. So the Indian Collective, who's been working out there to help get clemency for Leonard, they work on a multiple of different climate and indigenous sovereignty issues. I suggest folks check them out. They're one of our largest indigenous organizations. And then we have several others that are out there trying to build up mutual aid networks, trying to assert tribal law. And I'm not sure, JB, if you knew this, but our law, our treaties are supreme law of the land. Constitutionally, this is Article 6 of the Constitution, if I remember right. Someone in the chat can correct me, which states that treaties are the supreme law of the land, and that electors, judges, and senators at the time had to abide by it, which means that those treaties that were written with our nations, they are above the Constitution. And that's the coolest thing, I would have to say, being an indigenous organizer, is we get to do those cool legal federal tactics that other Americans don't have the rights or the privileges of to be able to do. And we're going to see throughout this next administration of Trump on how we can assert those tribal laws and those treaties. Because right now, as you brought up in inviting me on the show, there are a series of Trump legislation and executive powers that go after indigenous nations.
Yeah, and whenever I look at what's happening to the Palestinians, I think what they're going through is what you and your nations have went through about 400 years ago by that point, right? It had been 400 years already, but it's been so for you guys. Just imagine the Palestinians going through what they're going through for 400 more years. And then you get the Native American nations within this land. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Indigenous nations and indigenous leaders have stood with Palestine since the inception of the colony Israel. We have leaders like Dennis Banks from the American Indian Movement, John Trudeau from the American Indian Movement, and deeper into the newer age, Nick Estes, who all have stood in solidarity with Palestine. And, you know, indigenous nations haven't only just stood with our Palestinian allies, we've also stood with the Irish when England was salting the land, causing the famine. We've stood with all indigenous people that are being colonized. And you will see another great organization out of indigenous nations is the Indigenous Environmental Network, who does a lot of great work at the international level, the ICJ, the COPs and everything, and how we work with our indigenous nations from Central and South America to um, um, Africa and greater up into Greenland, Iceland, and our Inuit and Siberian indigenous relatives. So I feel you. You know, this is a greater colonization of the world, not just of Turtle Island. Yes, we've been battling for 500 years plus, but the Africans have been battling for 500 years plus. You know, the South Americans have been battling as long. You know, this global empire. I'm happy to see. You know, we're near the end. That's what Chris Hedges says. That's what Robert Wright, I believe, says, or Richard Wolff says, that we are at the end of an empire, and where we choose is, we can choose to carry on this colonial capitalist path. This is part of our indigenous nations, our seventh generation prophecies and the eighth fire prophecies. We can choose that red path, that colonial path, the black snake, or we can choose that green path where we view our family members, our neighbors, not of like financial risk or a financial benefit, but as family, as community. You know, we coexist with the land. Last time I was on your show, we talked about biomaterials. You know, that's how we move forward in this green economy. This is how we move forward in breaking up this colonialization. Is we break up this global network of exploitation and colonization. And I can't wait until 2028 and the general strike pops off and Turtle Island here, we're ready to join the global resistance that have been popping all off in Central America, South America, the Pamina, over in Europe. And we don't even know what the movement is anymore compared to the other nations and how much they've thrown down. So I can't wait for us to join. And I feel for our Palestinian allies and the refugee or exiles over here in America. We will stand with them. You know, we will not abandon them.
Joey, let me ask you this, because I didn't plan on asking you this, and I wasn't trying to get metaphysical in this way, but it popped into my head because I asked this question to a couple friends earlier. I think it was either last night or earlier this morning. And I want to get your thoughts. Intuitively, do you feel in your gut that something big is about to happen, probably by spring? I don't know what it is, but I feel something in my gut that something big is really going to happen by spring. Am I the only one? Because I feel this way.
I haven't felt spring, but since 2017, I've been feeling something is gonna happen within the next 10 years. Something big is gonna happen. And so when the Auto Workers United chair in the fall of 23 said that they're calling for all unions to end their contracts by the May of 2028 to do a mass general strike, to me that was the indicator that that's the 10-year mark. That's what my gut was saying, is like, we have 10 years, and that 2028 is that 10-year mark. What we do until then is we focus on mutual aid. I woke up today with Indigenous Nation blowing up our Facebooks saying that Trump took away EBT and that our SNAP benefits are gone. It scared me, you know. It scared me not because I'm on EBT, but I have friends and family members who rely on that. I have, family members who are not in a good financial standing, and this might be, that scare might be their last, and they might leave us. We can't jump to like sensationalism and freak it out because every little thing that Trump does is being blown to proportion, like out of proportion. But we do have to prepare ourselves. And we do that by focusing on mutual aid networks and not a national mutual aid network. I'm talking about your local community mutual aid. Because when things go down, we're not going to have social media to communicate. We're not going to have your cell phones to give a message out. You're going to have to focus on your neighbors, who's going to be, making sure that your family doesn't starve. So, JV, that's my gut. My gut is saying 2028 is our year, but that doesn't mean we sit back until 28. That doesn't mean that we just focus on mutual aid. We also have to bring our community's voices to representation. Because when FDR popped off, when the citizens went to the White House with pitchforks and torches and told FDR, hey, knock the shit off, pardon my language. And he went over to JP Morgan and said, hey, give me some money or else I'm sending these folks to you. He left us out. He left the Black Americans out. He left the Indigenous populations out. And they only focused on how can they institutionalize this gift away from the Indigenous BIPOC? How can it strictly benefit our white demographics? So we can't have that happen this next time around. I don't trust the unions to represent my community's voice. Certainly not after Taft Harvey. Certainly not after Taft Harvey. But to me, that just means that we have work to be done. Your community, my community, we have to work together to make sure our voices are elevated within this larger movement for a general strike, a larger movement for a reform. And I keep on going back to that general strike because JV, we have a couple different options. We have World War III, coming up if we want to go down a bloody, brutal path with our international allies and enemies, or we have on Turtle Island, a civil war that could be brewed between the right and the left as much as we allow that to divide us, or we can come together as community members and build up mutual aid, build up our voices, and push towards a peaceful, nonviolent general strike. And to me, that is the best path. That is the green path that my ancestors have prophesized around.
Yeah, I mean, there's the phrase that basically says if an egg is broken from the outside, an outside force, life ends. But if an egg is broken from the inside, then life begins, right? So the thing is like you got to break the egg from the inside. And so I definitely echo your sentiments there, especially about mutual aid. One thing that I wanted to switch gears to was, you were mentioning about Donald Trump and some of the policies that he was implementing. And as of last week, because as of yesterday, he has been president for his second term for a week now. And there have been a lot of moving parts within the last few days, and especially in regards to immigration. Unfortunately, there has been a huge display, I would say, of ICE raids that have been happening. But some of the ICE raids have actually been happening also to Native Americans as well, even though they're native to this land, which is weird. I'll share this right now. This is out of Axios. It says Native American tribes warn members about ICE confrontations. So I just want to get just a few words out of this, and then I'll get your reaction. says tribal nations in Utah and throughout the U.S. are telling their citizens to hold tight to their IDs amid reports that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have been targeting Indigenous Americans. It says heirs to a devastating legacy of forced removal from ancestral homelands, Native Americans are now being given reason to worry they may get caught up in deportation roundups. Says the Navajo Nation officials told CNN on Monday that at least 15 Indigenous people from the Southwest United States have reported being questioned or detained by immigration officers since Wednesday. I would like to get your thoughts about this because it seems wild to me. And a lot of people who are saying, and unfortunately, there's a lot of Black Americans that are also standing behind the mass deportations. And I'm trying to let them know that just because they're doing it to a certain group of people doesn't mean it's going to blow back on you. If you can expand on this, because I see this literally happening to the Native Americans.
Well, I live in that 100-mile radius buffer that ICE has set out. So Bemidji is straight in that 100-mile radius. And I had a great out of Minneapolis comment on this, stating that, you know, we don't work with ICE. We just simply don't work with ICE. But also that don't be scared. There is a huge chance that they will grab you. You do have legal rights within this country, but as of now, they haven't long-term detained anyone. That is the biggest fear, because we know ICE doesn't. You don't have to actually have a court appearance until you're deported out. Keep your IDs on you. Myself, I'm a dual citizen due to blood lineage. I'm also partially Canadian. I'm scared. I am personally scared myself. I had a conversation with a good friend last night. Her son, his father is Libyan, and she's afraid. His father is currently a citizen, went through the process, has been a citizen for about 2.5 decades, decade and a half. She's afraid that there was talk that they're not going to go through the female lineage of the people, erasing natural born citizens, which kind of works with the thought of, like, you know, how does he protect his own children? Their mothers are not of this country. Again, I don't want people to jump to sensationalism, but we can't ignore the huge thing in the room, and that's the corporate establishment. Core Civic has gotten skyrocketed stocks since, well, even 2 weeks before Donald Trump became up or got into office. There was 2 board meetings between 2 private prison companies congratulating Donald Trump the day of. I believe it was Glenn Greenwald who covered that, or the Gray Zone. And this is where it goes to. It's $200 a day per adult, and it's about $800 a day for a youth to keep locked up. And that's going to the private prisons. And you're going to talk DeSantis out of Florida, but Florida is one of the states that allows these detainees to work. Forces these detainees to work pretty much for pennies on the dollar. So this is all about dividing our communities between races, and then making money for white people, rich white people. And I had a conversation earlier today with my aunt over on the Turtle Mountains, where she was watching Fox News, and she's saying all this about the immigrant, the drug cartels and all this. And I had to remind her, Auntie, who in this country has more drug crimes? Who in this country has more sex crimes? Certainly is not a migrant from Central or South America. It'd be a white person. And who's bringing more drugs onto our tribes, our tribal nations? It's not an immigrant. It's not a migrant. It's white people coming onto our tribes, trying to marry into our families with trying to, what I straight up told her. It's old fat white men trying to get our children into giving them drugs so they can sell them off to the sex trade. So who's a bigger threat? Who is a bigger threat to indigenous nations? Migrants from Central or South America, or that white man in the man camp that's right next to our tribe, digging and pillaging our land? I'm sorry, my dog. And you're on mute, JB.
My apologies. I'm trying to be responsible because I'm near a road. But one of the things that I am hard pressed in thinking about was there's a particular, I think it's in Los Angeles, there is a white woman that was working for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department that was also trafficking fentanyl into the United States. And she's one of the biggest drug traffickers in the country. She's a white woman. She's working with the police. It is not missed upon me how there was an investigation and there's now a lawsuit going on that police in South Florida are now being sued for making crack cocaine in their precincts and selling it to us, to our families and our people in our neighborhoods, to try to get more of them and then place them more in prison. So when it comes to who the blame of the drug trafficking lays on, we know who it is. And we know who the people who are pushing this is doing, because ultimately, I've said it before, capitalism, and maybe this is just, the nerd, millennial nerd side of me, but it's just like Majin Buu going back to his original form, right? Going back to this most evil form, and its most evil form was that of chattel slavery. And if it can't enslave you, then it will neutralize you. And if by neutralize, I mean the other word, yes. And so that's what it feels like. It's like, well, if you won't do the work for us, then you need to be either executed or taken out of the country. Because if you're not going to do the work, for us for free or nearly free, then we have no use for you. And there was somebody that was talking about Native Americans, Indigenous Americans that are coming across the border. And somebody said that, well, if you think about it, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, California, these were all originally part of Mexico. So aren't they just coming home?
Before the colonizers took over the land, there was no borders. You're right. Turtle Island, we went from A to B without getting harassed by state taxes. We could just freely travel, in which we did. When the Spaniards came originally, before the Europeans came, the tribal people fought them back, the tribal nations down there. Like I told you, I'm a dual citizen. We were, part of my family was in Canada. A great part of my nation is in Canada. We didn't have this divide between the United States, what is it? Not colonized, but colonize this land. And they cut inch by inch You know, they gave us land and they put us off of it when they found out it was worth something. That's why over Mount Rushmore, which is I believe the 7 grandfathers from the Lakota tribe. And when they found out that the Black Hill had gold, they took that away from the Sioux. They did it to the extreme that a monument that was supposed to be for the Sioux, and they hired a Klans member to do the monument, and we got Mount Rushmore. 4 racists on a hill. The biggest spit into Indigenous faces at the time.
Yeah,
we don't have borders, and like you're saying, you know, on the southern border, there's a lot of tribal members that are dual citizens of the United States and of Mexico itself, because that their parents live on one side or the other. And for the longest time, there weren't actual gates or a barrier between the tribal reservations on the border itself. We could freely move past up until about 2015, 2016. That's when they started putting up the effing wall. And that's when they started enforcing and hunting down those community members that live on the border and putting them under high surveillance, cameras on every street corner. And this is Indigenous land. You know, this is sovereign land that they're doing this on. And they terrorize the people that lived in that town. So this has been a buildup. What was it? It was still Obama that has had the record heights in immigration. He's known to be the original deporter in chief. And we're just, what is it, 16 years, 8 years down the rabbit hole? And when I was talking about like $200 a day for an adult, $800 a day for a child, what's the fastest way we get through this? Immigration judge, one of the lowest paid judges out there. And if I remember right, that's about $1,200 a day, or maybe even a week. Someone might want to check me on that one. But it's about $1,200 a day. That's one court hearing for a youth and one court hearing for an adult. Imagine how much we can process rather than hunting people down, rather than putting them into these detainment facilities, which are nothing more than a concentration camp.
Wow.
And
yeah,
you know, there's been that huge conversation on like, well, they've given them gift cards, they've given them debit cards to go live. Again, $200 a day versus maybe a $200 gift card. I'd rather have them get a public subsidy. I'd rather have all of us get a UBI. You know, not just the immigrants going into New York.
Yeah.
It's what we decide that they want to divide us. You know, and that's the best way to keep us from overcoming and I'm having a brain. Reforming this colony. Not to segue too out there. Sabrina had on her show Jasmine Sherman. She was a presidential candidate last year. And Jasmine had one of the best Indigenous platforms. And her of how we would have property, how we would govern that property, was to give it back to the Indigenous nations and then put out kind of like a Airbnb app where people could move into, and the house, the home, all of that would be paid for. When I talked about, you know, that green path, you know, when I talk about, you know, that general strike, it's what do we want afterwards? You know, what kind of industry, what kind of economy, what kind of governance do we want to see after we've torn everything down? Because like right now, a lot of us are focusing on Trump and the despair and the sensationalism. But to me, it's like, how do we find hope? And that's, what do I see after this? And I see that we have gotten our land back. You know, we balkanized Turtle Island, just like the Baltic states are all individual. We would break apart this colony and give it back to the ownership of the tribal nations and allow them to govern. We'd break up the industries that we have going on. You know that I'm huge around hemp. And I talked about this last time, that to actually have a hemp market, to have a bio industry or biomaterial market, it would have to come from the local level. There's no way Elon Musk could say your lawn trimmings are going to be turned into plastic for us, because we'd be like, wait a moment, that's our lawn trimmings. We're just going to, publicly fund manufacturing facility. And that's how we move forward. That's what gives me the hope, JD, is knowing that this troubled times that we have until about 2030 is going to transform the rest of my life. It's going to transform the rest of my community's life. And I can't wait. I know I'm going in, and I'm sorry, but that green path, to me, it's the hope that our economics can be cooperative. We're co-ops, and that we can coexist with nature, which means bringing in nature within everything we create. I'm looking at my Apple computer in front of me, and I'm wishing that all of this plastic, all of that was made out of hemp, was made out of leaves. I'm wishing that the microchips that are, made from minerals from the Congo, from Michigan, the Rio Tinto mines right on the Quani Bay community of Indians land, that we could make it that into hemp, from hemp products. And we talked about it last time. The Canadian Light Source has made those microchips out of hemp. And we've talked about how Elon Musk has stalled the hemp batteries that could be created. It's because they know that when we start mass producing this stuff at a local level, that they cannot control it anymore. There's no need for that slave labor over in the Congo. There's no need for that fight and battle over in the Quani Bay group of Indians, the Fond du Lac, who are facing Tinto, and the Wet'suwet'en tribe out of Canada, who are also facing the same mineral extraction from the same companies. That hope, knowing that we can rehabilitate the land. Hemp can even make molecules, radiation molecules, inert. So they're no longer harmful to us. Our Superfund sites that are estimated in the billions to rehabilitate and be able to use again, we can get it done for cheap. We can get it done. It's just, we're choosing not to with the systems we have in place now. And James, I can't wait, because the people are getting pissed. Luigi was not a red flag. He is not the start. He is the result of our anger. He is the result of our frustrations, not just with the health insurance industry, which, that executive was out of Minnesota, where I'm from, just saying. But the overall black snake, that capitalist mindset, that thought that your neighbor, your loved one, your cousin is nothing, just a financial risk or gain to your household. We can't think about that anymore. We have to ideal what Luigi wanted us to, really think about is like, how do we get over this? Because I don't want any more dead CEOs. Like in prison CEOs, I'm for that. Rehabilitating those CEOs, I'm for that. But my elders, they tell us peaceful, nonviolent. We look at the American Indian movement. We look at the Black Panthers. We were warned, be peaceful, nonviolent, because otherwise you'll have people sitting for 47 years like Leonard. You'll have people assassinated. And JB, these ICE raids, we stand in solidarity with our Central and South American family members and relatives. We stand in solidarity, but this is only going to get worse. Those ICE raids are for private prisons, for the immigration detention centers. But we have private prisons for ourselves. We have those cop cities. We have those, 86 cop cities that have been placed around the colony over the last 4 years under a democratic leadership, mostly under democratic states. And those are for us. Those are for when we go on strike, that those cops come to your doorstep and say, hey, it's time to go to work. And what do we do then? Do you take that hit? Do you go to jail? That's something we're all going to have to make a decision of at the time. But it's only going to get worse the next 4 years. And to be honest, JB, we should be organizing. We should be utilizing that anger and that frustration, not just of the left, but certainly of the right. Everything that Trump is doing right now, everything you can tie to the corporate establishment. And his base, yeah, they may be racist as all heck, but they also hate that corporate link. That was the original Tea Party movement within the Republicans. And they're the ones that mostly embody that libertarian perspective of small government, no government subsidies, not even to the people, but not even to the companies. And they see all that corruption. And we just have to remind them that the big picture on the ICE raids is core civic. It's your tax money. It's that $200 a day for adult, $800 a day for youth. That money should be going towards building schools. That money should be going towards fixing my roads from these potholes from the winter. But I'd rather have Core Civic, all these rich white people that own it, Geo Group, make all of this money off of our public goods and resources. It's the same moving forward. The executive orders that pertain to Indigenous Nation, they also are connected to Donald Trump's fossil fuel company and extracted corporations. We tied last time I was on your show, Elon Musk with those mines. Well, a lot of those executive orders to tap our indigenous land are for our minerals, not just oil, but for our minerals. And that ties into Teslas, that ties into your cell phone batteries, that ties into a huge need. And I don't know what you're covering on China. I hope I don't ruin it. So if I get too deep, you can be like, hey, we're covering that. But they released a trade ban, or they banned minerals that are used in bombs and arms for war from coming over to the United States. They're winning. They're winning against us. There are reports that our Pentagon are calling the same 17 contractors that hunt these minerals across the globe, and those 17 contractors are keep on telling the Pentagon, no, we can't find them, and we are being strangled. And it's not our domestic products for minerals. It's just the products for war that China has put a ban on. So I wanted to give a little shout out for that, miigwech, because that's going to help us calm the bloodthirstiness from this colonized country.
Yeah, you know, very great points, especially there is a lot that Donald Trump is doing. One of the things you mentioned was about the drilling. Of course, Joe Biden was no better. I mean, look at what he did with the Willow Project. But, you know, Donald Trump is now saying things like drill, baby, drill, because he wants to use the excess of the oil drilling to lower the cost of goods. But if
good
that's...
luck with that. To be honest, good luck with that. There are umpteen permits from both the Trump administration and Biden's administration that are sitting there from fossil fuels. They can't find the funding. I don't know this, but one of the biggest movements and most successful movements and campaigns in the climate movement is our divestment. The reason why all those permits are sitting is no banks are willing to touch it. And, you know, moving forward, we have to think about that. You know, how do you stop the government, or how do you stop drill, baby, drill? We'll take a note from the divestment campaigns. We went after their money. We locked down their money. We took our money out of those financial institutions that funded those projects. And those other institutions took note, saying, hey, we want your 401ks. We want your house loan mortgages. We want your car loans. Don't take it from us. We won't fund them. So what I'm trying to get to, JB, is like Donald Trump can say, hey, we're going to put out all these more permits. All I got to say is we're going to resist him. We're going to lock him out. Not just him, we're going to lock out those companies that think that they're going to buy up those permits. Those indigenous land, you know, the last time when he went after Bears Ears over in Utah, if I remember right, it was a bid system. People had to be on the site to bid for it. You know, next time we do that, we're going to be on site with cash on hand. We'll be there. We're going to buy it all up, land back. And honestly, I work for an NGO, and that's part of the grant system makeup is you can ask for grants that specifically purchase land and infrastructure and get funded to buy back land for your tribe. It's just, how do you tie that back to the tribe? And I've had many conversations with tribal council members and some tribal attorneys and a couple of peers of mine, and you know, you can very well put that money that you buy, or that land that you buy, into trust and gift it back to the tribe to use only for like preservation or cultural heritage. So Donald Trump can say he's going to sell all these permits, all of this. Doesn't mean he's going to get those permits funded. We're going to shut them down, just as much as we've shut down Biden's, who, if you look at the stats, beat Donald Trump in his first 4 years of permitting, which to me is frankly disgusting, because that's not my Auntie Deb Holland's department, the Department of Interior. She oversees all those permits, or she did during Biden's administration. And knowing that he placed her in that position so she could be that gatekeeper, so she could absorb all that backlash for selling our land to all these white people.
One more question that I wanted for you was, and when I first heard this in Donald Trump's inauguration address, the first thing that popped up in my head was this was a slap in the face to the Native Americans. When he wanted to change Mount Denali's name back to Mount McKinley, I thought, you know what? That's a slap in the face to the Native Americans of Alaska. Because how are you going to, if we took the name that we put on that mountain away and gave them back the original name, why are we going to go, oh, we're just going to put the name back on there? The name of a white man that, you know,
JB,
that, sorry, go ahead.
The white man is going to call that mountain Mount whatever, all he wants. That whatever they want to call it, what we need is land back. You can call that land Mount Rushmore, as far as I care, as long as it's indigenous lands. And that, you know, that's grabbing that sensationalism. Is that a battle that I want to fight? Is because a white man wants to call this mountain a white man's name? That, to me, no. My battle is give me that effing land back. You know, I don't want to have a small fight because you want to have a dispute over the name. We have that in Minnesota all the time over if we're going to call this lake a squaw lake or not. Squaw is a harmful indigenous term. And to me, it's the same as when UND, University of North Dakota, went over and fought against, you know, the Fighting Sioux. Yeah, it's racial. To me, what is the bigger issue? You stealing my land or you using my name against me? Both are bullshit. Don't get me wrong, JB, but to me, it's more as like, I don't want to grasp at the small things and burn myself out. And that's what they want us to do. They want us to grasp at all those small things. So our peers, our family, all get burned out from us trying to mobilize and organize them over the big things. Not saying that name is not a big thing, but in the long run of things, it's not. You can call that Lake Squaw. You can call that Mount McKinley. What's important to me is who owns it, who governs that land, who is the custodian of it.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think about, like, for instance, with Black Americans, we're talking about reparations, particularly cash reparations, and we're like, we don't care if Donald Trump puts his name on the reparations check and then he calls it the Reparations Act of Donald Trump. We don't care. Like, just do the act, right? That's what the point about it is. It's like, if we want universal health care, I don't care if he calls it Trump care. Just give us universal health care, right? It's the act that matters more than the name. So.
Yeah, my best advice for people in this time, in this transition, is be mindful of what's going out there. Try to find out what's the truth and try to find out your ways to combat it, but don't jump on every small thing and burn yourself out. We have 4 years to build for that general strike, and I can't have you burning out in the first month of Donald Trump, because you're going to burn out and you're going to disengage. And we need you here helping build up our local community mutual aid networks. We need you here making sure that your grandma is taken care of, your cousin's taken care of, and that you're giving a call over to the town next over saying, hey, how can we work things out? So making sure if you're low on something, we can help you out. And that start of that mutual aid, that's the start of our local economies. That's where we start networking again with that neighbor. We start networking again with that neighbor in the next town. And that's how we build local. So if anyone, my thoughts are never trust a national movement worth its salt. Build locally, organize local. And if you do attend any national stuff, that's mostly marketing.
I got you.
And that's a lot for me to say. I was just in DC last week for an entire week. But to me, it felt like just a show. We were at the People's March. It was a third of the amount of people there during 2016. And I felt like my crew, my team were nothing but just a photo op for people. And it sucked. We went to the Martin Luther King rally in March on Inauguration Day, and it was a show. It felt like, they were going through the motions. So to me, we have to think about local. We need to focus on building community within our own towns, our own areas. And, if your homeless relatives are taken care of, then we are damn ready for that general strike. If our camps in Minneapolis have food, have gloves, have blankets, and are not getting raided on a weekly, then we're ready for that general strike. But we're not there yet. We have raids going on from the local police in Minneapolis, tearing down our camps for our homeless during sub-zero winter weather. If you want to fight somebody, go and fight for your homeless. Those are your relatives. If you see another relative getting shot down by a cop, go fight for their justice. But fighting Donald Trump right now, for most people, it's not accessible. You don't have a say. I don't have his voice. I don't have his ear. I don't have anyone's ear that's going to listen to me to tell him to do better. So what we do, the best way we can fight this storm, get your homeless people up in par. Make sure they're eating right. Make sure they have clean socks. One thing we do in Indigenous country, and one thing that our Black American relatives have done, that's mutual aid. I'm friends with Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. We do mutual aid like no other. We brought, 7,000 meals last May over to Chicago. Every year we're here in Indigenous countries getting hay for our dogs that sleep outside. As a community, we're setting up our youth to go shovel out our elders' driveways. We're making sure our elders are being checked on, that they have food, that they have the needs, what they need, the goods that they need to survive. Think locally, folks. Donald Trump is a distraction. At best, pain in the ass. And what he's building, what he's doing, this is just further down in the collapse of an empire. We're just a couple more years left of this empire. It's gonna be messy. It's gonna be ugly. But think about what's afterwards. Think about what you want afterwards, after the collapse. How can we attain what you want? What is your dream? What is your hope? Think which for this time, JB. And I really, really should get going now. I have a board meeting coming up in an hour or a couple hours, and I got to get ready for that.
Yeah. Before you go, can you just let us know about your organization as well, Muckwa?
Muckwa, yeah, here. Let me actually get all professional for this one. I don't get to do it often. Mm-hmm. Bear is awesome. Gina and I fought over that bear logo. I designed it, and she wants that black taken out of it. What do y'all think? That, like, right there, that black, she wants it out. Anyways, I'll get to that when I get to that. Mukwa envisions a decolonized future where no systems of caste and oppression exist, and all beings are thriving for all generations to come. To achieve our goals, we are creating a network of bear den organizers across Turtle Island, starting with states like South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, and Illinois throughout 2025. This network will provide strong support to the Mukwa matriarchs and their communities. We are actively looking for Indigenous women to come join us and take on some vital roles while we recognize and appreciate the contribution of all communities. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. We have 7 programs going on right now through Mukwa. We have Mama Bears, which is our MMIW program. And if folks don't know what MMIW means, that's Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives. Guardians of Turtle Island, which is my good friend Jay's program. He's working on protecting our wild rice here in Minnesota and doing a lot of GARN work, which is rights of nature work. The Gichigami Miniwishi Newegg, Charlotte's going to get after me for butchering that, even though it's in my own native tongue, which is the Lake Superior Warriors. And Charlotte Loonsfoot is working out of Michigan fighting the mining stuff out there, trying to protect the porcupines. If you go to saveourporkies.org, please sign the petition on there. We are trying to stop the mining over in Michigan. The Keep It in the Ground, actually, we renamed that to Onaqua Advocacy, which means water advocacy in Cherokee. Oh, I might be butchering that. And my nephew out of North Carolina is working on clean water. It's a clean water initiative. Our mutual aid program just got renamed to, excuse me, we're still getting things like all hammered out and everything. And perks about going to DC last week is I got to onboard a lot of us. So we got to work on our programming and our projects. Our mutual aid program is now named Roots Mutual Aid Frame to Table. And my good friend, Justin Blake, who is Jacob Blake's uncle, Jacob Blake, was the young man who was shot in Kenosha back a couple days after the day after George was murdered. So we have Justin Blake, who's with us, who's running our mutual aid program. And I'm your Just Transitioning for the 7th Generation program lead. And what I get to work out of my program is how we can build an economy for the next generation and the 7 afterwards. And that's where, JB, you brought me on today to talk about is, our biomaterials and how they all work together in building the next generation of economy and industry for not just Turtle Island, but for the world. We are mostly grassroots funded. We were lucky enough to get 3 grants last year that brought us up to about $25,000 for the 9 months that we had been open at that point in time. We're on our 10th month. And honestly, a lot of my time is volunteer. And I pull on average about 40 hours a week. And my husband is an amazing man who's really frustrated with me right now for pulling this for so long. But we are on the verge of hopefully getting a couple big number grants coming in the next month or two, so we can be self-sustainable and do the good work that we have built to do. And miigwech for focusing on that. And if you all want to donate, it's mukwaminkana.org. Mukwa means bear, and Minkana means path. And as I started out this interview, I am Joey Peltier. I am of the Black Bear clan. And if you want to go to our about and click our matriarchs.
Okay. Let's take a look. Oh.
And our matriarchs is our board. And we have 4 powerful Indigenous women. Some of you might know the folks on that page who are our board members. All strong Indigenous women. We have Gina Peltier, my older sister, who's our chairwoman. Winia Locke, she's our vice chairwoman, and she's out of the Cheyenne River Standing Rock tribes, and she rocks it out over in South Dakota. She's boots on the ground, comms everything from Standing Rock. She bounced over to Line 3 with us with her youth for a bit, and we're so lucky to have her part of our organization. Jane Jacobs is our secretary out of the Tuscarora Nation in North Carolina. She's a powerhouse who's been fighting the nuclear waste dumps and the poisoning over in North Carolina, along with helping build up her community. And they have just ran a bunch of mutual aid when it came to the storm last fall. And then our treasurer is Shauna Loonsfoot from Quonset Bay Community of Indians. She is a powerhouse in her own right. We wanted a younger person in the blood, and she is bringing up and making sure that I don't mess up on our books. She is on my butt on that. Just saying, those books were off up until yesterday, and she put the hammer down, and I had to sit for hours making sure my books were on point. Folks, they are on point. Thank you very much. And we have a handful of amazing staff. Like I said, we have 7 leadership staff that with our 7 programs, and then we have well over 15 organizers right now, and most of us are all volunteer time. It'd be nice to get some hours. Any donations are split between where you select on the donation links, and most of that goes to, or excuse me, all of that except for about 14% goes to the work itself, and 14% that goes to our 7 goes to our fiscal, and the rest go between our grant writer and myself as your admin.
Okay.
Holy wow, that was so in depth on the org. Sorry, JV, but yeah, running a nonprofit and NGO is like mind blowing. It's something that I never really wanted to do, and we needed a place. The group of us that left Climate Defiance last year, we needed a place to go, and instead of jumping to somewhere else, we made our own table, we made our own chair, and this is what we wanted to do. So we are glad to do it grassroots style. It's a slow grind, and honestly, 7 of us, we are democratically ran. That leadership board, decisions are made as a huge democratic unit, and if it's high key or if it's low key, we always talk about things.
All right.
I've been in orgs that were top down, and that leads for a lot of hurt. So we're trying to do it better. We're not trying to compete with anyone. We're just trying to complement what's out there and help and find our way. So miigwech for folks that are signing on for our newsletter, I'll have one out in the next couple of days explaining everything we've done in the last month, and which we've rocked it out. So miigwech.
Thank you so very much for coming on, and thank you for taking the time and also being very generous with your time. I know it went a little over, but look, I love getting your perspective on a lot of these things, and also congratulations on your great uncle, Leonard Peltier, being on his way home, and I cannot wait to see that moment. Please post it on social media so we can see and celebrate with you too.
Will do, and there will be a huge party when he gets back or when he gets home. So there's already plans of a huge gathering, and I can guarantee if you follow us on Makwa or if you follow Indian Collective on all socials or even IEN Honor the Earth, we'll all be posting the celebration of when Leonard returns and reunites with the family.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Joey. So good to see you again.
Have a good one, James. Reach out anytime you want me back on, and love you all.
Love you too. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.